Hi, and thanks for joining me. In the last video where I discussed online GIS courses, I focused on the mechanics of the content management system, setting up the Dropbox, setting up the gradebook, establishing links in the bibliography, setting up a student lounge, setting up the faculty information, and the course announcements, and the week-by-week structure. In this video, I'd like to discuss and show you one thing that you could do inside each one of these weeks. This is the way I do it, and I invite your comments. Let's take a look at week 1. This particular course has 10 weeks in it, and this particular course, GIS 4630 at the University of Denver, is called Public Domain Data for GIS. The objectives are to understand the sources, benefits, limitations, scales, and locations of spatial data that produce spatial data for use in geographic information systems. To develop a working knowledge of and practical skills in locating, accessing, downloading, and formatting public domain raster and vector data. 3. To develop knowledge of the organizations and initiatives that produce spatial data with an emphasis on public agencies, local, state, federal, tribal, and international. 4. To augment spatial analysis skills to address issues and solve real-world interdisciplinary problems by using public domain data within GIS software, specifically ArcGIS by Esri. 5. To become familiar with the history and current issues and policies, domestically and internationally, involved with producing, serving, and using public domain spatial data. And this includes anything from fee versus free to copyright to privacy and much more. Let's take a look at what I have in week 1. This week we will be discussing course objectives, reviewing how GIS acts behind the scenes each day of our lives, hearing about how you are planning to use public domain data sources in your own work and on the job, describing the characteristics of spatial data, and then start digging in with some hands-on activities. The discussion for this particular week is to address the following items, and there are 5 of them. Watch the introductory course video I have posted. Please read the file Chapter 1 in the GIS Guide to Public Domain Data book, which I have co-authored with Jill Clark, which will provide context for our course and start you thinking about the nature of spatial data and how public domain spatial data fits into GIS. Number 3, please introduce yourself. Describe your background, how you have been using spatial data in GIS in the past, and what your goals are in this course. That's to start fostering the discussion amongst the peers of the folks taking the class. Read and respond to GIS Touches Our Everyday Lives in animation on this particular website. What is your reaction to this article? Have you experienced GIS in your everyday life? If so, how? 5. Skim some of the pages in the annual Esri map books. Does the variety of ways that GIS is applied surprise you? Why or why not? Which applications of GIS are you most interested in? Select 3 applications, map titles in the Map Museum books, that you believe use some public domain spatial data. Give the title of the map and indicate which public domain spatial data sources were used. And then there are the responses and discussion. Let's go to week 2 now. During week 2, you will have the opportunity to learn about spatial data models, major portals for vector spatial data, and consider issues of data quality. You will also have the opportunity to download and use XY earthquake epicenter data from the USGS National Earthquake Information Center. And here's the specific assignment. This week, you will be reflecting on your readings and the short activity below. Please read the file Chapter 2. Which will provide context for our exploration of vector data sets and data quality. That is from the GIS Guide to Public Domain Data book. Number 2, got XY data? XY data is everywhere, gathered with GPS from earthquake epicenters, city fire hydrants, locations of stream gauges, and much more. This week you will have the opportunity to bring in some XY data from a public domain data site, the National Earthquake Information Center. However, you can use the same technique for any XY data. So then I provide some guidelines as far as how to go to the catalog at the USGS Earthquake Center and selecting the KML RSS feeds and data, formatting that file, and bringing it into ArcGIS desktop. Add the XY dataset you have saved containing this week's earthquakes using File, Add Data, Add XY Data. Then answer the following questions. What was the most significant thing that you learned from your Chapter 1 reading? What was the most significant thing that you learned from your Chapter 2 reading? Questions 3 to 5 relate to your XY earthquakes activity. Reflect upon the pattern of earthquakes around the world over the past week and in relationship to the plate boundaries and to the existing earthquakes from the Global 2 dataset. Reflect upon the ease or difficulty of bringing in this kind of XY data to your GIS. If this file had not been available as a CSV, what edits might you have had to do to bring it in from the USGS data portal into your GIS? You know from your assessment of the USGS earthquake site that the earthquake center is located in Golden, Colorado. The small earthquakes can be directly sensed by the seismographs at the Golden Center, but the ones farther away are sent to the earthquake center via satellite transmission, and only if they are larger. Examine the pattern of your data. How does the fact that the center is located in Colorado affect the overall pattern of earthquakes? How could not knowing this fact adversely impact your impression of the overall pattern and frequency of earthquakes in North America versus the rest of the world? This provides some interesting food for thought, which we will pursue later in the course in conjunction with our discussion on data quality. So I want the students to think about the fact that the earthquake center is in Golden. And so if you didn't know that, you would think that more earthquakes and more small earthquakes occur in Western North America. That's not the case. It's just that the earthquake center being there can directly sense most of those earthquakes, as opposed to those small earthquakes around the other parts of the world. So it's biased toward earthquakes in that part of the world, in other words, in Western North America. So this is just one small step in the overall goal, which is to get students, to get data users thinking about where their data comes from and why it has the patterns that it does, and the fact that how it was collected in part, oftentimes, affects the overall breadth and depth and data quality. Let's go to week 3 now and look at the assignment. This week you will have the opportunity to consider raster data and privacy issues and use data from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. Here's our online discussion points. This week you will be reflecting on your readings and the short activity below. You can kind of start to see the pattern, I think. I have the students read and reflect, and then I also have them do a hands-on activity. Also, a side note, they also are working on labs at the same time, which I discussed in the last video. So here's one of the labs, assessing citizen science portals and analyzing citizen science data in invasive species. So we are not concentrating on the labs right now. We're just showing what the week-by-week assignments are. So let's get back to week 3. Read the file Chapter 3, again from the GIS Guide to Public Domain Data, which will provide context and information about raster and privacy issues. Please read the slides Public Domain Data Overview and GIS Overview, which I have created and posted. Number 3, please access the data from the NREL site below and use it in ArcMap. So what they do is they go to the National Renewable Energy Lab at nrel.gov, they type GIS in the search box, they find the data for wind. You may need to input your email address and indicate why you need the data for educational purposes. Download some high-resolution wind data for a state of your choice, bring it into ArcMap, and analyze the data. Answer the following questions in the discussion forum. What was the most significant thing you learned about raster data from your Chapter 3 reading? What was the most significant thing you learned in Chapter 3 about data privacy issues related to GIS and spatial information? 3. Describe the state-level, high-resolution wind data that you downloaded from the NREL site, indicating the data model, raster or vector, file type, TIFF, grid, geodatabase, shapefile, etc. that the data was stored in, the map projection the data was stored in, the ease of downloading the data from this site, and more importantly, describe the pattern of wind speed in the state that you are studying. What are a few reasons for the patterns that you see? Number 5. What other data layers would you like to have if you were going to use the NREL data to recommend specific locations for a wind turbine farm in the state that you have selected? What agencies or organizations might have these specific data sets? So this could be anything from land use to electrical transmission lines to population centers to elevation and much more. Let's go to week 4 now and look at the assignment. During week 4, you will consider the true cost and accessibility of spatial data, and also more deeply think about and work with local data sources. Here's our online discussion. Please read the file Chapter 4 from the Public Domain GIS Guide, which will provide context and information about the true cost of data and local data access issues. Number 2, please read the document I have placed in doc sharing entitled How to Use Spatial Data. It unzips into a large PowerPoint presentation. I created it so that you could have a single document that explains what some of the large federal data sets are, some of the ways they can be accessed, and how they can be used within ArcGIS and by extension any GIS. I hope you will find it useful for this course and beyond, but recognize that data portals and some procedures are dynamic and therefore could change over time. Number 3, please access the data from the City of Boulder site below and use it in ArcMap. So they access the city's GIS site, and then once they are there, they select downloadable GIS data. They select building footprints, city floodplain and hydrology, main roads and street center lines, and land use as GIS layers from the City of Boulder. Unzip those layers and bring them into ArcMap and answer the questions below. From your Chapter 4 reading, put the fee versus free debate into your own words. What is your position on the fee versus free issue? Describe the City of Boulder GIS data that you downloaded, indicating the data model, raster or vector for your 5 layers, the file type the data was stored in, the map projection, the ease of downloading. Number 4, describe the spatial pattern of the city's floodplain. What are a few reasons for the pattern that you see? Number 5, determine the percentage of buildings that fall within the floodplain. Describe the procedures that you used in ArcMap to determine this answer. Let's take a look at week 5 now. Week 5, National and State Data Portals and Metadata Standards. This week you will have the opportunity to examine national and state data portals and consider issues of metadata. Please read the Chapter 5 in the GIS Guide for Public Domain Data, and please access the data from the sites below and use it in ArcMap. Say that the state of Texas has hired you to assess the risk of possible reservoir dam breaches resulting from hurricanes across Texas. Access the GIS data on the Texas Water Development Board's website. Download and unzip the existing reservoirs layer. From the National Atlas under Data Layers, find the Tropical Cyclones Major Landfalling Atlantic Hurricanes layer. Download and unzip. Bring your data into ArcMap and answer the questions below. From your reading, select 2 issues surrounding national and state data portals and describe them. In your own words, describe the importance of metadata to working with public domain spatial data in a problem-solving context within a GIS environment. Describe the Texas Water Development Board and National Atlas data that you downloaded, indicating the data model, file type, map projections, dates of the hurricanes, whether each record in the hurricane attribute table contains data for 6 hours in the life of the hurricane, 1 day, or the complete life cycle. In other words, I really want people to know what kind of data they're downloading and what its characteristics are. The ease of downloading the data from the Texas Water Development Board and National Atlas sites. Describe the spatial pattern of hurricanes across Texas. What are a few reasons for the patterns that you see? Determine the percentage of reservoirs that are within 10 miles of the hurricane paths. Describe the procedures you used to determine the answer. And here is the discussion that we had in this course with those questions being posed. That's all the time we have for. What we've done is we've reviewed the week-by-week discussion points and topics for this particular course, again using online course management system, in this case called eCollege. Thanks for listening.